Before we get right to page 4-14 where we left off yesterday, Dan, I had heard a rumor yesterday afternoon that this Friday you're going to be retiring from the media. The media. Yeah. Is that true?
Yes, it is.
Dan, how long have you been doing this reporting business? 18 and a half years. Well, we've certainly enjoyed over the years knowing you and being involved with you, and we, on behalf of council, I want to wish you all the best in the retirement and whatever lies ahead. You've been a good reporter, and we appreciate the work that you've done here in this county.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. You certainly kept it a secret to the last bit. Good for you. I think everybody really knows where we left off. Yesterday we are on Employee and Business Services summary. As I mentioned on the summary pages, as I call them, on up to 4-15. Anyone want to ask anything further on these summary pages as we move further into EBS? Okay, well, we'll get warmed up here. Councillor Brunton, please.
Well, we left off yesterday, and I had asked on page 414 about the 2016 expenditure of $252,000 under utilities, and I'm not sure in this whole budget, but it looks to me, I think I might have found that in a different area. It looks like it's been transferred. John, remember we asked that question? And
I certainly recall you asking the question of that, and I think there was a bit of an explanation about the phone services and how we've put them in a different, charged them back directly to the departments. Is that a fair statement?
Well, I get, is it spread through all the departments, or just, it seems to me the information systems, I added something up in there, I believe, that came to the 353,000 almost, 352. But is that correct?
John or Candy, can you respond to that, Candy, please?
It's
John?
through Mr. Mayor, it's we're just getting it up on the screen for council to see it. And just before we get started, the big screen here, we have a technical problem with putting up on the big screen what you're seeing on your monitor. So the big screen is kind of out of commission. So we've added another monitor at the back and all the monitors that are around here, and you'll be able to see what's being displayed, but we can't display it on the big screen. So anyways, what we're looking for is
on page 414 under utilities for 2000
information systems, Cindy.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I believe that Ms. LaPlante responded to that yesterday in that the amount is in the EBS area, but then is charged to each of the departments under interdepartmental charges?
Right.
under
Interdepartmental charges.
yes, but is it through the entire county or
Yes.
just
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah, it's all charged. In the past, it was all charged to the information systems budget. When we changed the accounting system, it's now being charged directly to each individual user of phones.
Okay.
So that when you with the bottom line, John, on that page where you say interdepartmental charges, like those are credits, right? And then net financings are credits. Would it like?
The reason why the net financing is a credit is because, where are we here now? Right here?
Sorry, we're not.
Oh, we got the wrong, hang on, we're going to get,
Yes. Okay. So net financing is a credit.
yeah.
It's because they're probably transferring more than the debt charges. Transfer from the reserves or reserve funds.
This is for.
It's to fund the
So I guess my question, if I
Okay.
might ask it a little again,
Yeah.
if you charge, if your department was charged for something like the phone lines or internet, would it show up as a credit under one of those two columns?
Make sure we're all on the same page. Are you looking at the Employee and Business Services Department summary?
Yes.
Okay. If you got that up there, Cindy? If you go down on that to the line that says net financing, and expand that, please. Now, if you look at that, you'll see. Scroll down, you'll see these are the transfers for the whole department, not just for IS. So if you
Right.
if you go down, you'll see. There's a transfer from reserve funds for $556,000. Very last line.
Right.
That's the amount of money that's transferred from reserve funds to fund the WSIB premiums
Right.
and all of that, and the operation of the
Okay, well, let me just get this. If this was a different department, I'm trying to get this straight here. If they were getting charged for a disbursement of telephone would it show up on one of those two lines, like as a credit? Or would it be a debit? It'd be a debit, wouldn't it?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, under interdepartmental charges, that's the line there that says net interdepartmental charges
Yes.
/ recoveries. If a department is being charged for a service from another department,
Right.
it would show up there as a debit.
Okay.
If that department is an exporter of services, it would show up as a credit.
Gotcha.
The net amount is what's coming in less what's going out.
Right.
When you look at the whole corporation, that balances out to zero.
Okay, but my question, I guess, is the bottom two lines there, interdepartmental charges or net financing, that could be in either one of them too as a credit, right?
That's correct. You could have those show up as a net credit or a net debit.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
Councillor Black?
Well, I know at the last budget session, Mr. Mayor, that some of the councillors requested some changes on reporting, and I think interdepartmental charges was one of them, and the net financing, which I believe, is it not explained in your report? I am looking at it, and it does give you an explanation of net interdepartmental charges, recoveries on page 6 of 16, net financing, the next page, and I'm not sure if there's any other requests from councillors that are now new to this budget to improve it, which I think is a good idea, but I know maybe sometimes it's a bit confusing that what are the changes, and I think those are two that were explained in the report.
I guess what if I may, Your Worship, when I look at the RAB over there, there's, I don't know how many departments in there, so do they split that cost up to everybody? The rent? Is the rent distributed to the 3 or 4 departments?
Through the mayor to Councillor Brenton, we have not did that. We haven't did an allocation at this point in time. We have a cost center for just the RAB building itself.
Right.
But all other departments, for example, financial services, we are charged a rental rate here for the cab. The council budget has some facility charges also. But the RAB building, we were waiting for a year or two to get some information on the cost of running the building, and then we'll look at allocating it amongst different departments.
Okay, so I guess that's where it becomes sometimes, you don't see it clearly, you know what I mean? Or at least I wouldn't see it. I assume you distribute that by floor area or something like that, would you? The cost?
We will.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to continue then, unless there's any more questions on the summary pages. I will go to 416 and 417 are the division summary. Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mayor Luca. Through you to EBS. On page 4-17, the top line, salaries and benefits. You had a budget of $260,000 and your forecasted actuals actually came in at $43,000 over. And this is for 2 employees. And now you have an adjusted budget of $264,000. So I'm curious as to how you're going to get that down $39,000.
If I could, Mr. Mayor, and then I know that Mr. Ford is also wanting to respond. I believe we briefly, Councillor, touched on that yesterday, in that the forecasted actuals, we believe that that's overestimating. In fact, because we have had a change in staffing in the division during 2016 with the hiring of Ms. St. Amand, we believe actually that we should be under budget in this area, as opposed to the forecasted actuals, which are certainly over what was approved in the 2016 budget.
So you're expecting the reduction because you put someone else in place? Is that what that is? Because payroll's payroll, so I have to believe that the forecasted actuals are rather real, because we would have had T4s sent out, or we would be sending them out very shortly.
Well, perhaps Mr. Ford would like to speak to that.
Mr. Ford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you go back to page 414, where you look at the department summary, you'll see that the budget was $4 million, and the salary and benefits in total are $3.9 million. The difference is about 50 grand. And so when you look at the whole department, the number's right. When you look at the individual divisions, we have some accounting issues as far as allocating the salaries to the divisions. What we're actually charging there is not matching how the budget was set up, and that's a byproduct of rolling out the financial systems and changing the way that we account for salaries and benefits. But for the department as a whole, you can see that the numbers pretty much bang on.
Right, but to me, that's moving the numbers from department, but you're in charge of one division. And that particular department has a budget, and by moving it around through the departments under the one division, that just doesn't sound right to me.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I don't understand what Councillor Height said. The division amounts roll up into the department total.
Okay, so the department's above the division. Okay, so
Yeah, I thought you had it backwards.
right. I mean it the other way around then, because if you have 5 departments under, no, is it departments under divisions? Divisions under departments. Okay, so if you have 5 of those, each one is basically a separate business unit, really, to the budget. But there's moving around between the 5. That's what I find in this report.
With the exception of salaries and benefits, the costs that are in each division would be right. The costs for salaries and benefits are a little out of whack at the division level, but not at the department level. And that's because of some changes we made in the accounting process relating to human resource, salary and benefits costs. Okay. So the department total's right. The division totals for salary and benefits are out of whack. The controllable things, like supplies, materials, and all the rest of that stuff by division, those would all be right.
Okay, so in this instance, we were not able to put forward a motion to reduce a certain division. We would have to do it in the department because the numbers we're working with are combined?
If you're talking about salaries and benefits. If you're talking about...
Hold on.
Right. If you wanted to change something in a division budget, you can do that. You can do it at the division level or the department level. The actual expenditure for salary and benefits is the one that's out of whack. The actual expenditures for all the other things should be correct.
Okay. One of my concerns with this is that like this department as a whole was $143,000 over budget. Now, they're looking to come back in with a proposed budget, and the total on that would be $290,000 over, because of the way being over and you reduce your budget but it's not attainable. Right? If you go to page 4-13.
Candy, can you respond to that question, please?
Yes, thank you. And I'm not certain whether I'm actually responding to a question other than I would like to make a comment in terms of specifically the salaries and benefits that were in the approved budget and the forecasted actuals. And I understand Councillor Height's concerns, but what I can say is that obviously I oversee this budget line, and I can assure a member of council that in the application of the salaries and benefits for this budget line, all of the Norfolk County policies and compensation practices were followed. I also know for a fact that neither, obviously, the GM position is not entitled to overtime pay. However, the senior administrative assistant position is entitled to overtime. And obviously, Mr. Ford cautioned us yesterday about talking about specifics about individuals because of privacy issues, but I've consulted with both Mrs. Binkley and Ms. St. Armand, and they are comfortable with me saying to members of council that there was no overtime paid out of this line. So when we asked for the $260,000 and that was the approved budget in 2016, there's no reason to believe that any more than $260,000 has been paid out.
Thank you.
Maybe, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, maybe yep. I'm not getting my point across here. It's just, okay, the IT, or Information System Services, is looking for a levy requirement of $416,000. If we make that cut out of there, which I don't necessarily feel is right, if we're going to move across divisions, it could be moved into another area. It's... So it's really hard to make specific cuts if it gets bounced around.
Well, I have to say that to me, Councillor Height, and I certainly differ from your opinion, and that's okay, and certainly you differ from mine, but overall this division or this department has come in under budget from what they budgeted last year. Overall, the fact that some divisions within that department are a little bit over, some a little bit under, you know, that's accounting.
Right, but IT is looking for a budget increase of 41.3%.
Yeah, well, we haven't got to that yet,
right? And
we will get to it, and we can ask the question then when we get there. But to me, it's budget over budget is what I look at. What is the increase in this year's budget over what was requested and collected last year? So I don't know how long we want to dwell on the fact that some departments, for whatever reasons throughout the year, spend a little bit more on overtime or wages or whatever is required, and some under. But in the end, if the money that is collected and approved by council for that department is under budget, I think that's a good thing. I don't know. Do you want to add to that? And I'll go to Councillor Black.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to clarify that notwithstanding the forecasted actual column, I mean, the way the budget is prepared, in many cases, things like the salary and benefits are determined really almost like a zero-based budget. I mean, you're essentially looking at the staffing complement and plan and costing that out by division. So I have confidence in the salary and benefit figures shown in all of the divisions.
Anything further, Councillor Height? Councillor Black.
Yeah, Mayor Luke, just to support what you just said, and I know it's been my experience over the years, and maybe I've said this before, whipped into shape by the system and by staff, but the way I see a budget process is for council to scrutinize the budget, absolutely, and but not to be the staff member. And quite frankly, when it comes to being so specific to make specific cuts, there's no way I have any expertise in evaluating that. That's up to staff. Now, if I want to make a cut, in the end, after we've scrutinized this, and we've got a budget of 4%, 5%, whatever it may be, we could say to staff, we would prefer a 3% or a 2%. We want you to take it back and you find out where the most appropriate place to cut would be. That's their job, not mine. I feel I would be irresponsible in trying to make those types of specific cuts. So anyway, as you said, you know, you have your opinion, and I think I'm side with your opinion, and others have theirs. But really, I think that is the better approach. Anyway, that's how I feel about it.
On 417, this division is asking for a reduction of the net levy requirement of 5.5%, some $19,000. That's what the line I go to, and then I work back from that to see if it's significant increase. Then I'd like to ask questions as to line by line, why this increase is so high. That's sort of the approach I do. Others may have a different approach, but are there any other questions on 4-17 so we can keep going here? Anything else there you want to ask about? If not, I will go to the clerk and council services. The backup information is there. I am on page 4-20. Councillor Black.
Oh, Mayor Luke, I'd like to ask some questions, not specifically on the numbers page on 420, but on 419.
Oh, absolutely.
If that's okay, where upcoming main objectives, initiatives, or milestones, and just so I have a better understanding of the first bullet point, review of records management policies and expand file hold rollout. What's the file hold? Is it a program? I think I have an idea what it is, but...
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, terrific question. So this year we're going to review our records management policies, so that includes the records retention bylaw for both us and the health unit. So those will be big projects that we'll be bringing before council. The file hold system is our electronic records management system. So we've rolled that out to council services. We're in the midst of getting it through human resources now and working on developing some workflows for their process with it, and we're also going to roll it out to councillors. So we're going to be switching this year to using that as our agenda management system, and we'll be stepping away from CivicWeb. So we expect that to happen in probably April. So we'll be going live then, and we'll keep both systems live for a couple months just to make sure that everything transfers over efficiently. It's going to be a bit of a different system, but it's got a much better keyword search, so we think that it'll allow councillors to search things much easier, and it'll also allow you to have read-only access to things like closed session records and documents. So if there's other stuff that councillors want to look at, you'll be able to access more information.
Okay, well, that sounds like a good thing. Thank you. And secondly, under main budget drivers, I would hope that at some point, because I'm still feeling very uncomfortable with this whole idea of the second bullet, the election reserve fund for 10,000, electronic voting. I mean, I have been reading articles pro and con, and I would hope that the clerk at some point, I'm sure will be coming to us, will have a report that says, here's the good, the benefits of doing the electronic voting, but there are some cautionary things. That's what I'm reading, and I don't know if Andy wants to comment on that or not. So I'm feeling a little anxious about that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, of course, there are some very dangerous things with electronic voting. The system that we would go with would be monitored externally and would be done through Dominion, who provides our voting machines. So it wouldn't be something that we would be in-house doing. It would be contracted out to them to do. And they have a good record with doing it, but I do understand. I come from underneath a clerk in Hamilton who was adamantly against it, and her position was never. So we'll definitely present both sides of it, because there are a lot of people who say electronic voting does lead to fraud. And if you could think, simply you're getting the voter card at your house and you vote for your spouse. With electronic voting, that really can happen quite a lot, and there's no way that we can monitor that or prevent that, and that's why it hasn't been ever brought to the federal or provincial level. But we have safety at the municipal level because so many other municipalities are utilizing it now.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, just to comment on your challenges, which I think it absolutely is the emerging trend that I've seen. First bullet, the increasing expectations from the public, demanding more. That's the day and age, I guess, that we're living in. Those are just my comments, and thank you, Mayor Luke.
Thank you. Councillor Height, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the clerk. The new business licensing, there will be a revenue on that. What do you have that estimated to be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was very difficult to estimate for this year. So we estimated on the very low end, simply because we're trying to get buy-in throughout the year. So we aren't going out to any businesses this year, any new businesses, I should say. The existing ones that previously have licensed, it's business as usual. But the new ones, restaurants, hair salons, even manicure places, we're going up to them and we're proactively throughout the year encouraging them to come in for a license. And then in 2018, if they don't have that license, we're going to be strictly enforcing the rules. So it's more of an education and rollout right now. I can tell you, I don't think there's a lot of restaurants yet in Norfolk County that do have the licensing, but that are all required. So when the health unit goes there for the regular inspections, they're telling them, go get a license. But the number is so hard to do it that we estimated, I think, very low. And we also estimated very low for the October Friday the 13th, with the expectation that council is still considering it, and we didn't think that it would be that high of an uptake. Our May one had a slightly lower uptake last year just because it's a wet season, so we didn't know how many people would anticipate for it.
Okay, so the rough amount would be?
I'm trying to think, with all the different categories of licensing, I think it would be a rough amount of around $5,000.
$5,000. And what fund does that go into, or does that go into your department's budget?
It goes into our department's budget.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Andy, what will the charge be for this business license? Like, say it's a restaurant, they want to license their business, and how much staff time will be allocated to that licensing?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So if you think of some of the ones where we have regular inspections already, restaurants, hair salons, manicure ones, we're already doing all the work for inspecting them. The health unit does that already. So the fee for those is just going to be $15 per year. We hope to increase that over the years as we do it, and we could start giving some of that money to the health unit, obviously, because they're the ones that are doing the work. So they deserve to have those staff offset. But our end, the administration, that $15 is likely covering our administration. The other thing that it is kind of covering is we also have a process in place now where we're going to have a quick informal check of the zoning before all business licensings are issued. And that'll just eliminate cases where businesses come to Norfolk County, set up in a place, and then they get told a year later, you aren't zoned properly to operate here. So we're hoping to eliminate conflict before it starts with new businesses.
So if a contractor's running a plumbing business like a home industry or home occupation, does that mean they'd have to call in and get this business license then? They may have been there for years.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we currently don't license the trades, although a lot of municipalities do. So if council would like to consider that in the future, that's something we could bring forward.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Oliver, please, and then Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is also on page 4-19, which is the challenges and emerging trends. And the clerk and I have had a conversation before about this, and that's in regards to the legality or lack thereof for a member of council to participate in a meeting remotely. In other words, you're away on vacation or something, and you have to be away from the meeting, but through access to the internet, I mean, I could be here and participate almost as actively as other councillors around the table. It's my understanding that that's still illegal under the Municipal Act. And that's my question. I see there are proposed changes and revisions to the Municipal Act coming up. Is that something that's still on your radar, Mr. Clerk, that you will raise and allow us to have some discussion? I may be the only one that sees merits in it, but it happens often enough to a number of us that I think if it could legally be done, I'd like to see it done here in Norfolk County.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is one of the aspects that they're reviewing in the Municipal Act. So there is an expectation that we will be able to have some form of, whether or not it's council logging in remotely for a meeting. I don't know if we'll go that far, but we'll definitely be able to have deputations and other things like that done in the near future. So I think the expectation is that it'll coincide with the next term of council. And one thing that we're looking at and talking with IS is when we bring forward the council renovations, we're going to have that in mind so that we can enable all sorts of extra technical aspects in here. To give you an example, what you see on your screens when we do the renovations, other people here would likely be able to just open up their computer and grab that. So we're going to have some different systems in place when that comes in to coincide with the new revisions.
Thank you, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Andy, sorry, my question through you to Andy. I'm on page 420, Andy. Contracted services. And well, you show where you budgeted 48 last year, but you spent 80 for contracts. Can you explain that to me? And I see where you budgeted 50, which is in line, I guess, with the previous year, but what happened that you spent 80 for contracts? You see that?
Yes. We were kind of looking into that. I think some of it has to do with where we were charging our accounts to. So there would be other accounts that were offset by it. It's kind of when we got the new financial system, we made some changes to where we had our fees. So I think there was simply that we were just charging things to contracted services that shouldn't have gone there. Another aspect of it, some part of it is we would have been over budget in this account simply due to we had to use Purelator a lot more this year for one incident, and I'm trying to think that would have accounted for around 9,000 or 10,000.
Okay, and the other concern I might have is looking at your revenues. You had budgeted 167,000, but you came in at 137, but now you're going back up to 160. Is the revenue, do you anticipate quite an increase in your revenue over last year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I mentioned to Councillor Height, we kind of, when we went through with our revenues, we took a very modest approach, so we didn't think that we'd make a lot of money off of the new business licensing. So I do think that amount is what we will make, and with this year too as well, we don't have the final revenues for this year yet, so we expect that final amount might be larger than what's there currently.
So you're comfortable with the 100, like I guess comparatively from 125 to 147, that's a fair jump. You're happy with that?
Yeah, it's what we estimate based upon what we expect with the licensing issued.
Makes you look good, Andy. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. I have two quick questions, and the first one is on the salaries. I know when I went through this budget, I know that overall in this corporation, the net levy budget is approximately close to 80% salary and benefits. That's just a fact that our biggest expense is salary and benefits as it relates to this levy. Normally, we know that, and you do explain why you're up asking for another 8% up in the main budget drivers. I certainly understand 2% roughly for cost of living, economic, as you call it, merit increase on the grid. I understand that. But 2% of 700,000 is 14, so there's about $40,000 there in grid and job evaluation results. How much of that $56,000 is in your department is from job evaluation?
Great question, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so I would suggest if you look at the 2016 actuals for salary and benefits, this is likely an incident where we were given lower because that amount has been in this year's budget as well. So you can imagine the $40,000 isn't that you're citing isn't for this year. It would have been also paid out last year. So you could almost add an extra 40 to that number right there. When I came into council services, we noticed that there was kind of a flat line for all the positions, and a lot of these positions hadn't been reviewed ever since amalgamation. So I hate to say that we don't place the value on, we value all positions here, but a lot of staff were doing significantly different positions with significantly different levels of responsibilities and being compensated in the same manner. And one of the aspects of ensuring that we're prepared for succession planning and strategic management is making sure that the positions that we have are accurate to what you could expect compensation for the role and the duties that you're doing. So so there's $40,000 is for job evaluations. We went through and we did a lot of union jobbies, and then after we did some of the union ones, the non-union ones were done for clerks. So there has been a lot of jobby work done there, but I would suggest that a lot of the areas where it was done, we did enjoy a savings for a long period of time. I wouldn't look at it as much as an increase now as we enjoyed a savings since amalgamation through some wrong classifications of positions.
Okay, you've explained it, and I guess, I'm well aware that some divisions and departments aren't that high. And there are some cases when I went through the budget where there's a decrease in FTEs, there's a decrease in the amount of money needed. But what it's going to force someday to happen if we are to get a handle on some of our salary and benefit costs is it really forces us as management to say the only savings we'll ever make is if we downsize in numbers. That in this specific example, and I'm not suggesting this happened, but when you have 9.35 and you say we can't continue to increase salaries and benefits 8% a year or whatever it averages out to, that we're going to have to get 8 people doing what 9 people did last year. And I don't want to even suggesting that it's coming to that at this point, but 8% increase in salary and benefits to me is why we're struggling with what we're doing. It's just one example. I'm not picking on your department. It's anyone else on this? Mr. Broughton, please.
Along the same area there of salaries, question I have is when and I'm going to give an example of this, when we moved the deputy clerk, and don't ask me how they moved, but one moved in, one moved out. I think they traded positions. You can answer. Anyways, my question is, when you move from one job to another, do you get an increase if that position pays more? I assume you would, even if you're in a learning position. But what if you move the other way? Would your salary go down, or does the salary never go down?
Candy?
Based on the grid, right?
Okay, Candy.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's also a good question. Yes, certainly if you move from one classification to another and you move to a new classification that pays a lower rate of pay, then you would be paid on that new salary grid. Now, you may end up moving to a different step on that grid, but yes, you would be paid at that newer salary grid.
So is it safe to say nobody takes a job that pays less? Is that the way we look at it?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, actually, that's not accurate. Absolutely, employees tend to apply for higher classifications, but we do see circumstances, based on different scenarios where individuals actually do move to lower paying classifications. Not often, but it certainly does happen.
So when they do, they take the lower. Now, what about if they're in a learning position, like they drop down on the grid? Is that what you're saying?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. There's obviously a start rate of the position, a number of steps, and then what we call the highest rate, which is called the job rate. So if someone is new in a position, then they could, yes, be paid according to their experience in that new role.
Thank you.
Anything else on 420 Council and Clerk Services? And again, if I move too quickly, you can go back. I'm not trying to go too fast, but I want to keep things moving here. We'll now go to the corporate, thank you, Andrew, by the way, corporate support services on summary on 4-23, and the net levy requirement here looks like it's going in the right direction, a decrease of 5.7. Shelley, good to see you. Candy, I'll turn it over to you. Anything here before I open it for questions?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I'm on 4-23 and 4-22, and I'll start with Oliver and then Broughton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question relates to the council-approved initiative, and I fully recall, as I'm sure we all do, that we did approve the continuation of the temporary full-time FTE corporate support services property management coordinator position.
And for those, I was going to get to these at the end of the department, but you're certainly in order to bring it up as we go. So, Councilor, is on page 5 of the new budget initiatives.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Sorry
Mr.
to
Mayor.
interrupt.
That's okay. My only question on this is, I guess my memory's not very good anymore, but I see we're paying for this position out of reserves and reserve funds. And again, I'm looking at the sheet in our little new budget and council-approved initiatives. Sorry, it's on
Page 6.
6,
Yep,
yes.
keep going. You're good.
So my question to Ms. Webb, Candy, the rationale for us doing it that way, I know this position has been creating revenue for us in terms of selling off properties that are deemed surplus to the county's needs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we can't continue that way, and in reality, it is a real cost to the corporation, even if it's coming out of a reserve account. So how long do you anticipate we will be able to justify, assuming we want to continue this position, to have it coming out of reserves as compared to showing it generating its own revenue, if you like, as new revenue, in order to justify maintaining the position?
Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Oliver, the position is actually funding itself. So what happens is any sale of land actually goes into that reserve account. So the work that she's doing currently is actually offsetting her salary. So we have in excess of $500,000 this past year. So we have several years of money that is being transferred into that reserve on a regular basis to cover the salary cost.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And I guess my only follow-up on it then will be, do you as the senior management within the department, is that a function that you're going to essentially carry out annually to ensure that this position, assuming we keep it, and I guess I will assume that for the time being, but is that something on an ongoing basis that you know you're expected to do to evaluate the effectiveness?
Through the Mayor to Councillor Oliver, yes, Council actually directed that as part of the approval of the position, that there would be an annual report provided to Council to outline sort of where we are with property management files and the amount of money that we have been collected through those sales. Just off the top of my head, I think we still currently have in excess of 120 files sitting in the queue waiting to be processed. So certainly you will have an annual report for that, even though that the contract is a 2-year contract, but you'll get an annual report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Brunton, please.
Yeah, under professional consulting services on page 423, I see a $23,000 increase there. Can you answer that one for me? Maybe I could see that line item brought up on the screen for, it's a total of about $218,000 for consultants.
I'll start the question while Finance brings up that information. That line includes services such as auditing, legal services, consulting, and we have some consulting needs in AODA and purchasing. It also includes adjudication, prosecution, and quality assurance for the POA area. This year there is a $23,000 increase to that line item, and that's mainly of legal services. However, it's offset with reducing some consulting services in AODA and reducing adjudication and prosecution based on actuals.
So this is only legal services in your department?
Through the Mayor, this is, again, legal services, consulting, adjudication, prosecution, and quality assurance and auditing throughout corporate support services. So that includes the various areas of corporate support services, risk management, legal, purchasing, property management, and also POA.
Because I think the document Kathy handed out shows $423,000 in legal fees. So some legal fees are in other budgets, I take.
That is correct.
Okay.
In corporate support services, there is an increase of $47,000 in legal services. That's part of that total area. However, that's been offset with reductions for an overall net increase of $23,000 in other lines in that area.
Okay, and I guess my last question is, under that, you show $12,500 for consulting. What are you going to get consulted on?
So in that line area of consulting, $12,500, we have $3,000 in the purchasing area, and that is as a result of the policy review that will be coming forward to council later this year, as well as some CCDC document preparation and training. And as well, we have $9,500 in our accessibility area relating to AODA compliance. So this could be things such as accessible documents. We use consultants for looking at websites, built environment and public spaces, such as engineering reports. If we've had a complaint, we'll get a consultant and help us mitigate that concern. Also, some policy review is included in that area.
Thank you.
Something on the breakout here we wanted to look at. Is it? It's here. Councillor Brunton, did you want this breakout?
Well, I've looked at it.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
So I'll go to Councillor Height and then Oliver.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Further to Councillor Oliver about the property management coordinator, there's an annual report. I don't remember that one from last year. Okay, when will the new one be coming?
Through the Mayor, Council received the report earlier in 2016 when you approved the contract. At that time, Council included in the report resolution that an annual report come forward. It's scheduled to come mid-February as an update, so then we can get on a yearly basis rather than doing it sort of July as we have in the past.
Okay, thank you. And then the next one, would we be able to see in materials and supplies on this page? I see that it was over budget.
I will indicate while you bring that up through the Mayor to Councillor Height is there are some recoveries and adjusting entries that are required in this section as we were going through for the forecasted actuals, but I can happy to answer any questions that you have specifically.
Okay, like meeting expenses, I see that it's gone over, and and that's not that big of a deal. But with the mileage, like what would corporate support services be billing mileage for?
Through the mayor to Councillor Height, we have had a change in staff being transferred over to corporate support services in our purchasing area. So you do see that line item over a bit because they didn't bring the budget of their mileage from where they were previously. But specifically relating to your question, we have staff that travel to various meetings. They do purchasing debriefings in the Delhi office. We have a number of customer service reps that attend various training sessions. They travel to Langton, various training. We do a lot of property inspections, so mileage is required to go and see a property file. And then, of course, we have our claims area where we actually go out to site and have mileage costs incurred to looking at different claims that have come forward to the county.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Shelley, just on your previous comment regarding the increase in our legal services budget, you said there's actually going to be about a $40,000 increase to that budget, which is offset by some reductions elsewhere. That is a big increase in legal for 1 year. Can you share with us, is it one or two files in particular that you anticipate requiring that much of an increase in legal support?
Certainly, through the mayor. Legal services has increased sort of by $25,000 in the POA area. That's the main driver. And certainly we see a trend in increased legal services for our municipal prosecution. We have more court hours and more court days, so that's driving that cost there. The good news is we're collecting more fines, so it sort of offsets in that area. We also have more property management files, so we have an increase of 10,000, 5 in admin and 5 in property, related to property management files. So that increase and that uptick in property files does require some additional legal services. And then the final area is our risk management area, about $12,000 increase in that area. What we're seeing is we've had a pretty significant change in our senior leadership team. And they are certainly questioning practices from the past, agreements, old licenses, all of that type of stuff. And that information is coming over to corporate support services to review and update. And we see an increased use of legal services. And then I'd also like to comment that we have seen in the past year and in the foreseeable year in 2017, we have 1 or 2 files from a legal standpoint that continue to accelerate some costs with some different challenges that have come forward to the county. So that's where sort of those drivers are in legal services.
Thank you, Councillor Black.
Luke, just wondered, I know your business, where would you see in this document the money you made from POA? Like that was supposed to make us money, and just wondered, how much did it make us this year?
Certainly. Through the mayor to Councillor Black, the line you want to look at is you want to look at the revenue line in the overall corporate support services budget. Last year, POA, it does make money. I don't like to say it makes money because it is fine revenue. However, there is about $400,000 at the end of the day net revenue coming to the county from the POA operation. We estimated this year for 2017 about $1 million worth of revenue for POA fines. Again, I only have statistics up until November 30th of 2016. We did exceed that amount this past year. As of November 30th, I think we're sitting at $1,018,000 of POA fine revenue. So we'll have a little additional to that. So certainly, POA is a busy operation, and certainly we do generate some revenue to the overall levy.
Okay, and this is one of the reasons why we took it over, because we, at the time, were told that it would make us some money. So, but you said 400,000 and then $1 million. What the difference between those two? How did we increase our business by $600,000?
Through the Mayor, to Councillor Black, there's operation expenses. So the net revenue is $390,000 proposed for 2017. So we take off our expenses of what it costs. Things like prosecution, ministry requirements, staff time, justice of the peace, etc.
So the 1 million was the gross revenue?
That's correct.
And the so the net 400. And then you said that we also make money from like Lydia Harrison's division there. And how much money did you say that she had made for us over and above the costs, her costs?
Through the mayor, I'll have to pull the report. That was given to council later in August, but that will be summarized in the update in February that's provided to council.
I don't care specific. Just can you just use your memory and...
I'm sorry, I'll bring... Yeah, I think over the period of time of the last contract, it was around $500,000 that was generated. But again, that is a 2-year period of time that the contract was.
That's fine. And then that money went into what reserve? The building reserve or property reserve?
Through the mayor, it goes to the property management reserve. And I think Carly's just pulling up the detail here from the report. I'm sorry, I don't have that right off the top of my...
Okay, I just wanted a general idea on that and where it goes, and then I guess how ultimately we can use it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I do, Councillor Broughton Shelley, and I think somewhere we were told there's outstanding fines to be collected of $6 million. Is that still the situation?
Through the mayor, that is correct. In 2015, the POA outstanding fines were $5.954 million. Again, I only have November stats for last year. We have seen a decrease because of some collection efforts that we've put forward. So we're looking at 5.939. So they are going in the right direction. However, council will have a report to them. First report will be about the changes in proposed legislation. That's coming February 7th to council. And then we are preparing a report for late March, early April on some collection strategies and considerations that council can make in that particular area.
Okay, thank you. It's just alarming that there's 5 or 6 years of outstanding revenue sitting out there yet. Councillor Black and then Councillor Broughton.
Just on that one, Mayor Lou, is it possible to sell that? At a reduced rate?
Through the mayor, I don't believe so. It is ours in perpetuity, I believe. It dates back, interesting to note, there was some discussion at council a few weeks ago. Some of these fines date back to 1973. So at the time of download, we had some pretty significant files handed to us. So it is a cash flow basis, and we don't recognize the revenue until it's received.
I know in some circumstances, people can sell that type of portfolio at a reduced rate, so we get our cash up front, and somebody else, they do their own collection from it. But anyway, you said no, so that's fine. Thanks.
Through the mayor, if I may just add a further comment, and that will likely be part of the discussion of the report that's coming sort of April. Internally, we collected last year $387,000 of fine, outstanding fine, and we also have a collection party agreement, third-party collection agencies. We use 3 collection agencies because we try to get them to fight for our business, and they only generated $35,000 worth of revenue. So really, it's that hands-on, that staffing collections that is really seeing some reward for the county, is dedicating some staff time to those collections.
Councillor Broughton.
My question, Mayor, looks along the same line as yours. Shelley, like you say, we made about $400,000 this year. How much of that, what percentage of that will not be collected based on past history?
I'm sorry, through the mayor, I don't have that number in front of me, but we can certainly try to get that information for you from the POA office and follow up.
Mr. County Manager, go ahead.
Shelley, I think what was being asked, the numbers you reported with the net margin of, say, 400,000, that was based on the recognizing the revenue on a cash flow basis. So we're not going to lose any of that because that's the money we've actually booked less the cost of providing the service. So that net figure she quoted was based on recognizing revenue on a cash flow basis, cash basis.
So I assume there's
More to be collected.
from last year.
I think that's a fair statement. Yeah, and she doesn't know what that is. We won't know until.
And the 6 million we're out, that's nowhere's on the books other than it's like an accounts receivable. How does that? It doesn't come into revenue until it's collected, is what they're saying. Okay.
Yes. Right. Thank you.
And one other question: you say you have 3 collection agencies. How do they charge you?
Through the mayor, I'll have to pull the amount, but it's a percentage basis. And one of the changes that the ministry did permit was that we can now collect the cost of the collection agency from that file.